She looked me dead in the eye and said, "You owe me $3,000 for swimming in your own backyard lake." Brenda Thornwick, a walking monument to Botox and suburban entitlement, delivered it with a smirk that made my stomach turn. Her stilettos snapped against my gravel like gunfire. The diesel stink from her oversized truck hit my throat. That smug little grin boiled my blood. "Rules are rules, honey," she cooed, shoving a stack of papers toward me. I smiled slowly and said, "You're right, Brenda. Rules are rules. And you're about to learn the ones you never knew existed." What she didn't know was that I've spent 15 years as a municipal water rights attorney. I've taken people like her apart in court for a living, and she had just handed me the dumbest mistake of her life. What would you do if an HOA tyrant tried to extort $3,000 from your own property? Drop your nightmare story below and tell me your state. Let me explain how this war began. 8 months earlier, I inherited heaven from my Aunt Minerva, a lakefront home in Lakeview Estates that saved me after the nastiest divorce imaginable. Imagine 15 acres of clear spring water, a private dock, and morning swims that felt like rebirth. Aunt Minerva was legendary. She fed stray cats, sued corrupt officials, and best of all helped found the HOA back in 2008. A smart woman who left me this refuge knowing I would need it. Lakeview Estates is not a normal suburb. We're talking 127 high-end homes built around natural beauty back when developers still cared. HOA fees are $340 a month for maintenance and lake management. 23 properties touch the water, including mine. Most neighbors are decent people. The Kowalski family with their weekend grills. Retired teacher Pat Murphy walking her ancient golden retriever. Marcus Webb who actually keeps his dock in shape. Every morning at 6 I slipped into the cold water. The splash echoed across a lake so clear you could see every stone at the bottom. Weekends meant fishing with my nephew Tyler, watching fog lift while coffee went cold in our hands. There was peace. Then Brenda Thornwick decided to ruin it. Meet the villain. Picture the final evolution of a Karen. Helmet blonde hair that costs more than your rent. Designer workout clothes she never sweats in. A Lincoln Navigator bigger than most apartments. Diesel engine growling like a monster. A smile so fake it could sour milk. 6 years as HOA president turned this real estate agent into a dictator with manicured nails. Every Tuesday and Thursday she patrolled the streets hunting violations like a predator. Wrong mailbox color. Grass too long by a quarter inch. Fine. Existing without approval. Fine. But Brenda's true obsession was purity. In her twisted mind, Lakeview belonged only to founding families and original buyers who worshipped her authority. Never mind that I inherited from one of those founders. To her, I was still an outsider. Here's something most people don't realize. HOA presidents often have financial conflicts of interest. Real estate agents like Brenda profit when property values rise, which gives them reason to over-enforce rules. Always research your board's business ties. Their harassment may be driven by money. The morning she shattered my peace started perfectly. I was swimming, cold water lighting up every nerve, when diesel fumes invaded my lungs. Her truck rolled onto my land and she started taking photos like I was a crime scene. "I must document this violation," she yelled. I swam closer, confused. Violation of what? Out came her precious notebook. She tracked everything from weeds to welcome mats, and now she read like a judge passing sentence. HOA Bylaw 47.3.2. Repetitive recreational water activities constituting commercial patterns subject to fees and penalties. My brain froze. Commercial swimming in my own yard. Brenda, I live here. This is my lake. Her eyes sparkled like she'd won the lottery. Daily use over 8 months equals commercial activity. Damages are $3,000. Pay in 30 days or we place a lien. Her heels crunched across the gravel as she strutted away. Perfume and diesel mixed into something poisonous. Entitlement has a smell. That night I sat on Aunt Minerva's porch, beer tasting like betrayal, staring at the most absurd document ever written. $3,000 for swimming behind my house. But Brenda had no idea who she targeted. 15 years fighting local governments for abusing power. I'd crushed bureaucrats, developers, and petty kings. She chose the wrong lake. Brenda went public fast. 3 days later my phone exploded with messages. "Did you see the HOA email? What's this about your swimming business?" She had posted photos of me online. I opened my laptop and felt my blood pressure skyrocket. Subject line, urgent. Unauthorized commercial activity threatens property values. She had turned my morning routine into a community scandal. The email sent to all 127 homes showed blurry photos with timestamps and GPS data. Recent investigations reveal unauthorized business activities using our lake without permits, she wrote. The Facebook group was worse. Brenda made a full presentation with charts and timelines of my so-called violations. The comments turned into a digital mob. People wrote things like, "Property values matter," and spammed crying emojis. That's when my legal instincts woke up. I remembered that the best weapon against bullies is their own paperwork. So while Brenda played social media prosecutor, I drove to the county clerk's office. The smell of dust and old files felt familiar. For hours later I struck gold. My aunt hadn't just served on the board. She helped write the original lake bylaws, and they were nothing like what Brenda enforced. Over 6 years, secret amendments appeared without proper votes, each giving Brenda more control and more money. Then I saw the financial statements. Brenda charged every home $85 a month for pool maintenance. We don't have a pool. We have a natural spring lake. That's over $10,000 a month for 6 years. More than $750,000 in fake fees. Then I found the invoices that finally made everything clear. The landscaping contractor. Getting all those sweet HOA contracts. Thornwick Landscaping, same last name as our precious president's brother-in-law. According to the business filings, he had been billing premium prices for specialized aquatic vegetation control, which in reality meant trimming grass near the shoreline once in a while. The irony hit me like an ice bath. While Brenda accused me of running unauthorized business activity, she had been operating a real fraud scheme for years. It was time to strike back. I printed every fake invoice, every questionable payment, every quiet bylaw change. Then I walked into the next HOA meeting with a smile Aunt Minerva would have been proud of. The community center smelled like carpet cleaner mixed with fear. 47 residents crammed into metal chairs, most staring at me with looks ranging from curiosity to pure hatred. Brenda sat at the front like royalty, guarded by her loyal crew, Treasurer Gladys Petton and Security Chair Derek Blackstone. Before addressing Mr. Riveride's issue, Brenda announced, practically choking on my name, "I propose a special assessment for urgent lake management upgrades. $500 per household." The room exploded with groans and whispers. Pat Murphy slowly raised her shaking hand. "What upgrades? The lake looks fine to me." That's when I stood up, papers whispering like dry leaves. "I have questions about our current lake expenses," I said, sounding like a man holding winning cards. "Especially these $85 monthly pool maintenance fees we've all paid, even though we don't have a pool." Silence slammed the room. You could hear breathing. The smell of sweat replaced the cleaning chemicals. Brenda's face shifted colors like a broken mood ring. "Those fees are for specialized maintenance," she said, her voice cracking. "Professional oversight of aquatic systems. You mean the natural spring that's been clear for thousands of years?" I smiled wider. "And is this professional oversight done by Thornwick Landscaping? Any connection to our president?" The silence stretched until Marcus Webb started clapping slowly. Pat joined him. Then half the room followed. Brenda's supporters froze. Her smile shattered. "This meeting is adjourned," she screamed, smashing the gavel like she was swatting insects. But it was over. As people left, 15 neighbors stopped me with their own horror stories. My phone buzzed. "You just made a huge mistake. $4,500 plus legal fees." I replied, "See you next meeting, Brenda." Her response to public exposure was fast and vicious. Within 2 days, she called an emergency board meeting during work hours so no one could attend. Friday afternoon, my mailbox smelled of fresh ink and threats. 3 new violations appeared. Unauthorized dock modification for installing a safety ladder. Excessive vehicle parking because of my nephew's Honda Civic. And my favorite, disturbing wildlife patterns because my swimming scared the ducks. But her real weapon arrived Monday morning in certified mail. The board had hired special legal counsel for my escalating violations. Thornwick and Associates. Another relative. Brother-in-law handled landscaping. Cousin handled lawsuits. She had turned the HOA into a family cash machine. The letter demanded $4,500 in fines plus $350 an hour in legal fees, retroactive from day one. Pay within 15 days or face property liens and foreclosure. They were threatening to take my house because I swam in a lake. I sat at my kitchen table as my coffee turned bitter and my pulse spiked. Rage tasted metallic. Fear smelled like ink and paper. But sometimes rescue comes from strange places. That afternoon, Pat Murphy knocked on my door with her old golden retriever wheezing beside her. Her hands shook as she held a manila envelope like sacred treasure. "Jake, your aunt told me to give you this if anyone tried to take the lake." Inside were copies that made my lawyer brain light up. Letters between Aunt Minerva and the first HOA board revealed the truth Brenda never knew. The lake wasn't HOA property at all. It belonged to a conservation trust with my aunt as trustee. The HOA only had informal management rights. And the best part, I inherited those trustee rights with the house. For 6 years, Brenda had collected money for property she did not legally control. Every fake fee, every abusive charge, every power grab was built on a lie. Your aunt always said this day would come, Pat whispered. She knew someone would try to turn heaven into a cage. That night, we gathered in Marcus Webb's basement like a resistance group. The smell of dust and fishing gear mixed with anger as 7 neighbors shared their stories. Marcus was fined $800 for safety rules that didn't exist. Gladys Martinez paid $500 for planting flowers in her own yard. The Kowalski family lost $1,200 because teenagers parked on the street for a birthday party. She's like a mob boss, Marcus said, opening a beer with a hiss. Except she calls it community standards. Dr. Amanda Foster pulled out a thick folder. I documented every fine, every notice, every strange fee hike. The pattern is obvious. Anyone who challenges her gets punished. That's when her biggest weakness became clear. She had recorded her own corruption. Every revenge fine, every family contract, every fake rule change, all neatly stacked like evidence waiting for court. The next morning I launched my attack. A formal complaint to the state HOA board. A detailed letter to the county attorney. And the master move, demanding an independent audit of HOA finances, something the law forced them to allow. Brenda panicked immediately. She called residents begging them to withdraw support. She even went to Pat Murphy's house, nearly crying, claiming the audit would waste resources. She protested too loudly. Cornered people do dangerous things. Her next move showed she had lost control. Friday afternoon, a sheriff's deputy knocked on my door. Temporary restraining order. She claimed my legal actions were harassment and intimidation. She wanted me banned from meetings, community events, and even from using the lake. The hearing was Monday. Time for the final weapon. I called Sarah Palmer, the top water rights attorney in 3 states. Sarah, it's Jake. You once said you wanted to destroy an HOA. Well, today's your lucky day. The hearing was meant to be her victory. It became her downfall. Walking into court, the smell of cleaner mixed with nerves and anticipation. Sarah moved like a predator with a briefcase snapping at her heels. Judge Patricia Mohouse read Brenda's evidence in 30 seconds. Screenshots of my legal requests. Her face tightened with irritation. Miss Thornwick, the judge said coldly, using legal rights is not harassment. This case is frivolous. Motion denied with prejudice. Brenda's face cycled through colors like a broken traffic light. The gavel slammed down with a crack that sounded like a gunshot, officially signaling the start of her collapse. But this was the moment when Brenda's panic turned into outright self-sabotage. Outside the courthouse, local reporter Cassie Rodriguez was finishing routine interviews when Brenda noticed the camera pointed her way. Instead of keeping quiet and walking off, she chose to stage a spontaneous press conference that would follow her forever. This is a terrorist attack on American property values, she screamed, jabbing a finger at me with perfectly polished nails. These outsiders with foreign names are destroying our neighborhood. Yes, she went full racist on live television. My Irish last name somehow turned me into an international threat. Within hours, the clips spread everywhere, including parody versions set to circus music. That same afternoon, I realized her meltdown had sparked something incredible, a collective awakening. My phone wouldn't stop ringing as neighbors shared their own Brenda nightmare stories. Each call uncovered another layer of her corruption. Mrs. Palmer, unrelated to Sarah, had been fined $400 because her mailbox numbers were not the exact shade of gold Brenda demanded. The Johnson family was charged $600 because their daughter's friends parked on a public street during a study session. But the real shock came when Dr. Amanda Foster called with news that made my lawyer instincts explode with excitement. Jake, I've been reviewing old financial files and something is wrong. Those monthly lake maintenance fees? The contractor invoices are fake. She had uncovered that Brenda invented maintenance bills for work that was never done. The so-called aquatic vegetation service by Derek Thornwick Landscaping did not exist. The invoices were printed from Brenda's home computer, complete with sloppy Photoshop edits and spelling mistakes that looked like a child made them. This was no longer just HOA harassment. It was organized fraud with a trail of paperwork longer than the lake itself. That night, we gathered in Marcus Webb's garage for what felt like a revolutionary strategy meeting. The air smelled of motor oil and resolve as 15 neighbors planned our final stand against Brenda's collapsing rule. She's panicking, Marcus said, opening a beer with a hiss like escaping steam. Panicked people do dumb things. He was right. The next morning proved it. I woke up to a destroyed mailbox, my car scratched with the words "Go home," and my security cameras smashed with what looked like a golf club. But here's the irony. Brenda was so blinded by anger that she forgot about the backup cameras I installed after our first clash. The footage was crystal clear. Her Lincoln Navigator arrived at 3:17 a.m., followed by 23 minutes of personal vandalism therapy. She even paused to fix her hair in my side mirror after wrecking it. Officer Martinez, who had endured years of Brenda's fake police reports, almost laughed while taking my statement. "Finally got her," he said, photographing evidence that added criminal mischief and intimidation to her growing list of charges. The final blow landed that afternoon. Sarah Palmer called with news that made my pulse race. The district attorney has opened a criminal investigation. Wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, all of it. And Jake, they want you as their key witness. Suddenly, Princess Brenda was facing prison time instead of just public embarrassment. 6 years of stealing from her neighbors had finally caught up with her. That night's emergency HOA meeting felt like theater. The community center overflowed with people, and others watched from live streams in the parking lot. The tension buzzed like electricity before a storm. Residents who had lived in fear for years could finally smell freedom. Dr. Foster called for a vote of no confidence. It passed 91-2, with only Brenda's most loyal followers clinging to the wreckage. When Brenda tried to declare the vote invalid, chaos erupted. People shouted about stolen money, fake contracts, and family corruption. The sound was powerful. Democracy waking up after 6 years of silence. "This is a witch hunt," Brenda screamed, slamming the gavel like she was smashing insects. I stood, holding Sarah's briefcase, and walked forward as the room went quiet. "You're right about one thing, Brenda. This is a hunt and we just caught our witch." The applause probably reached the next county. 3 days after her meltdown, I was in Aunt Minerva's dusty attic, searching for anything useful for the criminal case. Boxes stacked around me like monuments to her obsession with records. Dust floated in the sunlight and made me sneeze nonstop. That's when my hand touched something that felt out of place. Hidden behind old Christmas decorations from 1987, wrapped in plastic and labeled Lake Emergency Use Only, was a manila envelope heavier than it should have been. My heart raced before I even opened it, like my body knew what was inside would change everything. The documents inside made the world tilt. Original property deeds, conservation trust papers, and a handwritten letter from Aunt Minerva that began, "If you're reading this, someone is trying to steal what doesn't belong to them." The truth hit like lightning. The lake was never HOA property. It never had been. Legal records older than Brenda's fake blonde hair showed the 15-acre spring-fed lake and 50 feet of shoreline belonged to the Lakeview Conservation Trust, a legal entity created to protect it forever. Aunt Minerva was not just a founding member. She was the lake's legal guardian with full authority over access, protection, and fees. And now, that authority belonged to me. The irony made me laugh until tears ran down my face. For 6 years, Brenda had collected money for land she had no right to control. Every fake rule, every invented violation, every dollar of those maintenance fees rested on total legal fantasy. But what made me dance in that dusty attic was the fee schedule. Professional appraisals showed fair market value for unlimited lake access was $3,200 per home each year. Premium lakefront homes like Brenda's, with private beach access, were assessed at $5,200 annually. Princess Control Freak owed the Conservation Trust more than $31,000 in unpaid fees. My hands shook as I called Sarah Palmer. Her reaction was perfect. "Jake, you don't just have a defense. You have a nuclear weapon." My mind raced with possibilities. Cut off lake access immediately. Set market rate fees that would bankrupt half the neighborhood. Demand 6 years of back payments. Sue for trespassing and fraud. Or use this power to build something Aunt Minerva would respect. Her letter explained the plan. I let them manage things casually because most people are decent. But power corrupts, and some need reminding that nature doesn't obey fake authority. The lake belongs to the earth first, the community second, and tyrants never. She had built the perfect trap and Brenda had run straight into it in high heels. As I sat on my dock that evening watching the sunset turn the water to gold, responsibility pressed down on me. I could legally destroy every household, forcing them to pay thousands or sell their homes. Or I could create a fair community where bullies could not hide behind fake power. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus Webb. Emergency. Brenda is trying to dissolve the HOA tomorrow to escape criminal charges. Special vote scheduled. I smiled, watching ducks glide across water that legally belonged to me. Let her try. She had no idea conservation trusts override HOA authority or that her escape plan was about to become her worst mistake. Tomorrow I would show her what real power looked like. The emergency meeting was 18 hours away, and Brenda had no clue she was walking into a perfectly prepared legal ambush. I woke that morning to the smell of coffee and the promise of victory. But as I reviewed Aunt Minerva's trust papers at my kitchen table, a serious realization hit me. I realized I could legally dismantle every family in this neighborhood if I wanted to. The thought felt powerful and frightening at the same time. Then I heard Aunt Minerva's voice in my head from years ago. True strength is not about destroying your enemies, sweetheart. It is about creating something so meaningful that people want to stand with you instead of against you. That was the moment I knew I had to honor her legacy. My first call was to Sarah Palmer, who showed up looking like a courtroom warrior in a sharp business suit. The snap of her briefcase echoed through my dining room as she laid out papers that could change the future of our community. Most people believe HOAs control everything, she said, tracing a finger along the Conservation Trust Agreement. But environmental law belongs to the federal government. When land is protected under Conservation Trust, it becomes a legal force stronger than any local rule. She reminded me of something I had learned long ago in municipal law. Conservation trustees are not just caretakers of property. They are guardians of nature with the power to charge impact fees, demand habitat restoration, and override any authority that interferes with environmental protection. While Sarah prepared legal notices that would make Brenda's lawyer cousin panic, I walked the land that had started all of this. Morning fog rose from the clear water and smelled like justice and new beginnings. Each step on the soft soil reminded me why Aunt Minerva had protected this place, not for control but for the people. By noon, Marcus Webb's garage looked like a war room. The scent of motor oil mixed with nervous excitement as neighbors arrived carrying boxes of proof. Dr. Amanda Foster had built a presentation so powerful it belonged in a courtroom drama. "Look at this," she said, pointing at matching invoices. Brenda charged us $2,400 a month for special aquatic maintenance using equipment that does not even exist. The serial numbers matched machines sold as scrap 3 years ago. Then Pat Murphy walked in holding a small shoebox that smelled of lavender and hidden truth. "Your aunt gave me these before she died," Pat whispered, pulling out Polaroids from the 1980s. She recorded everything. The original lake environment, native plants, animal populations. She knew someone would need evidence of what this place was meant to be. Those faded pictures were priceless. They showed the lake before development and gave us proof for environmental restoration that justified every conservation fee I planned to introduce. Back home, I spread the evidence across my dining table like a commander preparing for battle. What I learned from conservation law would protect this neighborhood. Environmental impact fees must match real damage, not personal agendas. Families who could not afford money could help restore habitats instead. All revenue had to go toward real conservation, not private pockets. My plan was simple and fair. $200 a year per household, less than most people spend on entertainment subscriptions. The funds would support water testing, native plant recovery, and education programs to make this community a model for environmental care. But Brenda's luxury lakefront property would face a $5,200 yearly assessment. That was $5,000 more than everyone else because her oversized home, concrete drive, and chemical lawn caused the greatest harm. It was justice through numbers. She had stolen from neighbors for 6 years, and now true conservation costs would exceed anything she took from a single family. That afternoon brought my secret ally. Cassie Rodriguez from Channel 7 News arrived, already known for exposing HOA corruption after Brenda's courthouse outburst. "This story has everything," Cassie said as she set up her camera. "Corruption, environmental justice, David versus Goliath, and a villain who seems too perfect to be real." Then Officer Martinez called with news that made my heart race. "We have Brenda on video damaging your property and witnesses describing her threats. The district attorney wants to align tonight's meeting with possible arrests." As the sun dipped behind the lake in golden light, I felt the weight of responsibility settle on me. Tomorrow, 127 families would wake up in a different place. A place where power could not hide behind fear and nature truly mattered. I called Sarah Palmer one last time. "Are you ready to show an HOA tyrant what real legal authority looks like?" Her laughter sounded like victory on the way. Tonight, Brenda would learn that some battles choose the wrong enemy and sometimes the lake itself fights back. The cool evening air tasted like anticipation and reminded me why Aunt Minerva had chosen me. Not for revenge but for renewal. It was time to show this community what justice looked like when it rose from the water. Brenda unraveled 12 hours before the meeting. I woke at 5 in the morning to the roar of heavy machinery that felt like the end of the world. From my window, I saw her Lincoln Navigator at the edge of the lake pulling a massive water pump. She was trying to drain my lake. I grabbed my phone and recorded as she waded into the water wearing designer boots that likely cost more than most people's rent. The engine roared to life, sucking water with the useless effort of trying to empty the sea with a spoon. Diesel fumes filled the air as Brenda screamed over the noise. If I cannot control it, nobody will. Her mascara streaked down her face, hair whipping wildly as she fought hoses heavier than she was. The irony was perfect. Underground Springs did not care about her tantrum. Water poured in faster than her machine could remove it. Then Marcus Webb called, his voice shaking. "Jake, she's attacking everyone now. Brenda filed police reports against all your supporters. False harassment claims against me, Pat, and Dr. Foster. She is trying to turn the whole community into criminals." By 9 in the morning, my doorbell rang like a debt collector's knock. A man in an expensive suit stood outside, radiating legal pressure. "Bradley Finch from Thornwick and Associates. My client has a settlement proposal." Inside the envelope was a $50,000 check and an agreement designed to silence me forever. If I dropped all complaints, accepted her original $3,000 fee, and signed a lifetime gag order, this would all disappear. "Tell your client," I said calmly, "that federal prosecutors do not take bribes." His smile cracked. "It would be unfortunate if things became difficult for your family. Your nephew works nights, doesn't he?" The threat hung heavy in the air. I stepped closer and lowered my voice. "Did you just threaten my family?" "Witness intimidation is a federal crime and I am recording this conversation." He left so fast his tires screeched down my driveway. That afternoon, Brenda's chaos split the community. She convinced Gladys Petton and Derek Blackstone to spread lies that I planned to ban lake access and charge massive fees. Fear swept through elderly neighbors who could not afford court battles. Then came her most vicious move. Officer Martinez called again. "Jake, Brenda filed a report saying you sent death threats to her grandchildren. She has screenshots claiming they came from your phone." "That is impossible. I have never even met them. The timestamps show you were in court, but she wants you arrested before tonight's meeting." Forged evidence involving children pushed her from corrupt leader into dangerous criminal. That evening brought her final act of destruction. I was reading trust files when the smell of burning paper and plastic filled my house. Outside, flames rose behind the community center where HOA financial records were kept. Fire trucks screamed into the night as the building burned. Captain Rodriguez found clear signs of accelerant and a trail leading to a gas can with fingerprints that would soon expose everything she tried to hide. She thought she was protecting her freedom, but she made one fatal error. Sarah Palmer had already digitized every document through our public records requests. Brenda's attempt to destroy evidence only added federal arson charges to her growing legal disaster. The situation exploded at 10:47 p.m. when Tyler called me, his voice shaking with fear. "Uncle Jake, there are men following me from work. Black SUV, dark windows. They've been on me for 30 minutes, copying every turn. Criminal intimidation aimed at my 19-year-old nephew." That was the moment Brenda crossed a line and declared war on my family. "Tyler, drive straight to the police station. Don't stop. Don't go home." Detective Santos answered immediately. "We've got unmarked units on the way. Jake, this woman is building a federal case that could keep her locked up until retirement age." Sitting on my porch while patrol cars circled like guard dogs, everything became clear. Tomorrow was no longer about fixing the HOA. It was about stopping a dangerous criminal before innocent people were hurt. The night smelled of smoke and justice on the way, while sirens in the distance marked the sound of Brenda's total collapse. 12 hours until the final clash. It was time to end this before it turned violent. The lake moved quietly against my dock, unaware of the human chaos unfolding around it. At dawn, Brenda made her most desperate move. She tried to run. I woke to pounding at my door at 6 in the morning. Detective Santos stood there, coffee breath and that look officers get when criminals do something unbelievably foolish. We caught her at the airport with a one-way ticket to Costa Rica and 2 suitcases stuffed with cash. Airport security stopped her when she tried to board carrying $847,000 in bearer bonds. The irony was perfect. It was the exact amount she had stolen through fake pool maintenance fees. Now she would have to explain to federal prosecutors why she was fleeing with that same number. Her arrest set off the final chain reaction. Within hours, Derek Thornwick was talking to the FBI nonstop, confessing everything about the landscaping contracts, the padded invoices and the kickback scheme in exchange for immunity. Family loyalty vanished when prison became real. Even cousin Randy, the lawyer, tried to drop the HOA as a client after learning his legal fees were paid with stolen money. He now faced disbarment and criminal charges for laundering funds through his own office. By noon, the neighborhood felt like it was celebrating 2 holidays at once. Pat Murphy called, barely able to breathe from excitement. Jake, they arrested Gladys Peton too. She knew about the fake invoices and took a cut. The treasurer who approved Brenda's fraud for years was now facing charges herself. The entire corrupt operation was falling apart in public view. Then came the shock that made me spray coffee across my kitchen. Dr. Foster called and said, Jake, you won't believe this. The FBI found contracts showing Brenda planned to sell the whole community to developers. She intended to dissolve the HOA, sell the lake to a casino company, and pocket $3 million personally. She wasn't just stealing fees. She was preparing to erase the entire neighborhood for profit. Every family would have lost their homes to make way for a gambling resort. That afternoon, as news trucks gathered outside the community center, my phone rang again. Mr. Riverside, this is FBI agent Patricia Coleman. We need your testimony for an organized crime investigation. Organized crime. Brenda's HOA scam had grown into a federal racketeering case that could put several people away for decades. The best call came at 4 in the afternoon. Sarah Palmer sounded triumphant. Jake, the Conservation Trust paperwork has cleared federal review. You are officially the legal trustee with full authority over the lake and watershed. Brenda never had any legal control. Her arrest confirmed it. As evening came, residents gathered outside despite the cameras. The air felt electric as families who had lived in fear realized their tormentor was finally gone. Marcus Webb found me on my porch with 2 beers and the widest grin I had seen in months. You know the best part, he said. The community center is ruined, Brenda's in custody, and we still have to vote. Guess where tonight's meeting will be? I looked at the dock where chairs and tables were being set up along the shoreline. The lake Brenda tried to steal would host the meeting that rebuilt our town. On the lake she never owned, I said, enjoying the justice of it. As the sun painted the water gold, I felt Aunt Minerva's presence stronger than ever. She knew this day would come, when the lake would choose its guardian and the people would choose their future. My phone buzzed with a message from Tyler. Uncle Jake, I saw the news. You're famous. And those guys following me yesterday were undercover FBI agents protecting me from Brenda's crew. The kid thought federal protection was exciting. Only family. Tonight's meeting would create the new Conservation Trust, elect honest leadership and protect this place forever. But more than that, it would show what happens when corruption is dragged into the light. Aunt Minerva hadn't just left me property. She left me purpose. At 7 sharp, the entire community gathered on the shore for the most important meeting in Lakeview Estates history. Folding chairs lined the dock and beach, with extra seating on neighbors' boats floating nearby. Lights reflected off the water like stars while cameras filmed democracy rising from years of abuse. Cassie Rodriguez streamed live to 50,000 viewers as families finally spoke freely. The air vibrated with nerves and freedom. Dr. Amanda Foster, chosen as temporary chairwoman by unanimous voice vote, called the meeting to order with a gavel made from driftwood. Before we begin, she said, I want to recognize the person whose courage exposed the corruption that nearly destroyed us. Jake Riverside, would you address your neighbors? The applause grew until even the ducks scattered. I stood holding the Conservation Trust documents that would shape our future, feeling every eye on me. 6 months ago, I said, Brenda Thornwick tried to charge me $3,000 to swim in my own backyard. Tonight, I want to tell you what she truly cost this community. I revealed the FBI financial report. $847,000 in fake maintenance fees. $1.2 million in inflated contractor payments. $3 million in planned casino deals that would have erased our homes. Gasps rippled across the water. Even those who suspected corruption were stunned by the scale of it. But here's what Brenda never understood, I said, raising Aunt Minerva's Conservation Trust papers. The lake was never owned by any HOA. It never was. It belongs to a conservation trust created to preserve this ecosystem forever, and I had just inherited the duty to protect it. Marcus Webb began a slow clap that turned into another standing ovation. But I wasn't done yet. Legally, I could charge every household thousands of dollars each year for access to the lake. At market value, that would be $3,200 annually, enough to force many families to sell their homes. But that wasn't what Aunt Minerva believed in, and it wasn't what this community deserved. Dr. Foster leaned toward the microphone, every word reaching the live stream audience that had grown to 75,000 viewers. Then I made the announcement that would shape our future. I proposed an annual conservation fee of just $200 per household, less than what most families spend on coffee. That money would support real environmental protection, water testing, and education programs that would turn this place into a model of sustainable living. Relief spread across faces glowing under the floating lights. Elderly residents who feared losing their homes wiped away tears, while young families smiled at the thought of an affordable paradise. But I had one final point to make. There would be one exception to the standard fee. I paused long enough for the tension to build. Properties with high environmental impact, oversized homes, chemical lawns, and excessive concrete would pay mitigation fees based on actual ecological damage. I held up the professional environmental assessment that made my lawyer instincts proud. Brenda Thornwick's estate, with its massive footprint and chemical-heavy landscaping, caused enough harm to require $5,200 a year in mitigation fees. That was exactly $5,000 more than everyone else would pay. Laughter rolled through the crowd like waves. After years of random fines and intimidation, the community was finally seeing justice delivered with numbers and science. So yes, I said with a grin wider than the lake, Brenda will pay $5,000 more than her neighbors. Not out of revenge, but because her choices truly damage the ecosystem we are protecting. The applause went on so long that Dr. Foster had to restore order. Still, the room buzzed with stories of freedom, hope, and healing. Pat Murphy took the microphone with trembling hands. For the first time in 6 years, I'm not afraid to plant flowers in my own yard. The Kowalski family said they were staying instead of fleeing Brenda's harassment. 3 elderly residents volunteered to help teach lake conservation. As the meeting ended with unanimous votes for transparent leadership and environmental responsibility, I felt Aunt Minerva's presence like warm sunlight on water. Then I added one more thing as people folded their chairs. The Conservation Trust would fund a $10,000 annual scholarship for students studying environmental science, because protecting this place means teaching the next generation to love it. The final applause echoed across water that belonged to everyone and no one, carried by an evening breeze that tasted like justice mixed with community healing. Democracy had risen straight from the lake. 6 months later, the change felt unreal. I sat on my dock on a perfect Saturday morning watching the first annual Lake Conservation Festival unfold across water that shimmered like glass. 500 people from 3 counties came to celebrate what happens when cooperation replaces corruption. The festival looked like something from a storybook, but every part of it was real. Local vendors sold organic honey and handmade kayaks. Children learned about water ecology through hands-on lessons. Families picnicked along shores that smelled like wildflowers instead of diesel fuel. Brenda was serving 18 months in federal prison for fraud, embezzlement, and racketeering. Her sentencing felt strangely quiet. A woman who lost everything, accepting responsibility for destroying her own community. She would be eligible for parole in a year, but her reign of fear was over for good. The Thornwick business empire collapsed overnight. Derek paid $400,000 in restitution and now performs community service maintaining the same lake areas he once overcharged to manage. Randy lost his law license and works at a hardware store, humbled but honest for the first time in years. Yet the true victory was what rose from the wreckage of corruption. The Conservation Trust now generates $45,000 a year, enough to fund real environmental improvements month after month. Native plants returned to the shoreline. Water quality scores exceeded federal standards. 3 bird species not seen in decades came back. Property values climbed 23% once people learned about our transparent leadership and environmental success. Families moved here because they wanted to live where democracy and conservation work together. The scholarship program already helped 3 students begin environmental science degrees. Maria Santos, the detective's daughter, started studying watershed management with plans to return home and protect places like ours. My own life grew alongside the community. Dr. Amanda Foster and I discovered that fighting for justice together makes a strong foundation for love. We're planning a lakeside wedding next spring with Pat Murphy officiating and Tyler as best man. Tyler's passion for environmental science came from watching corruption turn into conservation. The boy who once came only to fish now interns with the State Environmental Agency, learning how to protect watersheds across the region. But the sweetest victory is how normal life feels now. Morning swims without fear. Neighbors helping neighbors without retaliation. Meetings about real improvements instead of invented crises. Last month, a desperate homeowner from California called me about an HOA running similar scams. Within an hour, I connected them with lawyers, environmental groups, and advocacy organizations. Fighting one HOA tyrant teaches you how to help others defeat theirs. I've now consulted on 17 cases across 4 states with the same advice. Transparency is the strongest weapon, and public records expose everything. The Conservation Trust's success has drawn attention from environmental groups nationwide. Next month, we'll host a conference on community-based watershed protection for researchers and policy makers to learn from our model. But the moment that would have made Aunt Minerva proudest happened last week during routine lake maintenance. Pat Murphy, now 78 and walking Arthur along the shore, stopped and thanked me for giving us back our home. "Honey," she said, with the wisdom of someone who watched a community heal itself, "your aunt always said this lake would choose its own protector. I think it chose well." As I finish telling this story and watch families enjoy water that belongs to everyone and no one, I remember that some battles choose their own heroes. Aunt Minerva didn't just leave me land. She left me purpose. So Jack didn't just escape Brenda's ridiculous $3,000 fine. He legally made her pay $5,000 more than everyone else every single year. But what makes this story powerful is what he didn't do. He could have destroyed the entire community. Market fees would have been $3,200 per household, enough to push families out of their homes. Instead, he chose mercy over revenge. $200 a year instead of thousands. Scholarships for children. Real environmental protection. That's what Aunt Minerva taught him. True power is not about crushing your enemies. It is about building something so meaningful that even your enemies are forced to respect it. Have you ever felt powerless against someone like Brenda, a petty tyrant with a little authority who thinks they are untouchable? Jacob proves that when you know the law, when you have proof, and when you keep your humanity, even the biggest bully can fall. Have you faced your own HOA horror story? Share it in the comments. We are collecting them. And if you enjoy seeing ordinary people defeat corrupt systems, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because as Aunt Minerva always said, the lake chooses its own protector, and justice truly does rise from the water.